If you're watching this, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you, because time changes how we read the people we love. My name is Diane Mercer. I'm 60, and last week I sold the company I built from a folding desk and borrowed coffee. $43 million, clean, no debt, no drama. That's what I told my son, Colin, and his wife, Naya, while I stirred the ice in his glass at the old oak bar in my living room. I kept water for myself. Late nights stopped earning me anything a long time ago. Mercer Rift is done, I said, keeping my voice level, the way you do when a lifetime needs a steady table. Paperwork's underway. It's a clean exit. Colin's jaw tightened like the weather was about to turn. What about my role? Our future. He almost said our. He always does. You'll have severance, momentum, and time, I said. You're smart enough to stand on your own 2 feet if you choose to use them. Naya smiled with that sugar over steel tone she brings to meetings, a little pat in her hand like always. You've built a legacy, Diane. Maybe sleep on it. I had slept on it for 3 years. The buyer, Kane Systems, asked the kind of questions that respect work. Short, precise, no theater. We shook on a number that felt like a country you could live in. And when the conference room emptied, I took one polite sip of champagne and stood in the window until the city told me I could put my hands down. I texted Colin, "It's done. Celebrate tonight." His reply arrived fast. "Proud of you, Mom." I have learned to read tone the way I read code comments. What's said, what's implied, what hides between the lines. And I told myself to take it at face value because a woman deserves a hopeful glass once in a while. I booked Terrace 9 at Parkview, the rail table where the breeze remembers names. Lanterns would be maps, a quartet would tune the room into something soft, and we'd toast the next chapter the way families do in photographs. Before that, I set the folder down on the bar and buckled on the watch I'd bought for my first million and forgotten to wear. It felt like a small ceremony I was old enough to deserve. The living room kept its ordinary face. Books with spines leaned from years, a plant that forgives me when I forget, the neat ring where a mug once lived. "This is the family business," Colin said, cutting the air with his hands like he could clear a path out of my decision. "It's the business I built to support a family," I answered. "That's different." Naya's pen suddenly moved faster. She never writes that quickly when we talk software. "Who's the buyer?" "Kane Systems," I said, and didn't add how clean their due diligence felt, how refreshing it was to watch people read my life's work without flattery. I have never liked flattery. You can't deploy it to production. We let quiet do some work because quiet is better at some jobs than people are. "You're 60, Cullen said, as if age were an indictment. "You could run this 10 more years." I could. I don't want to. I felt that truth all the way down to my shoes, and my knees agreed, and so did the tight patch between my shoulders that's been renting space for 30 years. "Tomorrow they'll finalize the timeline," I told them. "After, we'll have dinner and toast the next version of all of us." Naya brightened on cue. She's good at that. "Parkview Terrace?" "Terrace 9, I said, where the lights carve little roads in the air. I have a heart that appreciates belts only some nights, so I plan to order wine and orange juice and let the evening choose for me. After they left, the room exhaled, and I listened to it. I've learned that what people mean shows up in the spaces where they don't talk. I put the pages back in order, term sheet, transition, escrow, and touched each with the flat of my hand like a captain counting rails. Then I did the small dignities that keep a woman alive. I set tomorrow's pills, laid out a dress that doesn't apologize, and placed my phone face down so it could rest from being a messenger. I believed the hardest part of the week was behind me. I believed a lot of reasonable things. I did not yet know that a glass can be a cliff and that a mother can stand at the edge and decide not to jump. Parkview arrived dressed for forgiveness. Lanterns strung like little constellations, the pergola breathing a slow breeze over linen that didn't dare wrinkle, a quartet testing notes that sounded like a door easing open. I took Terrace 9, the rail table that lets you pretend the city belongs to your good decisions, and ordered a glass of red and an orange juice because some nights my heart appreciates belts and some nights it doesn't. Tonight, I wanted both options and the authority to choose. Colin hugged me with the stiffness of a man rehearsing warmth. Naya kissed my cheek half a heartbeat too long, the way people do when they've already decided what you should feel. We spoke travel like a script. Japan, pines, trains that arrive on time, benches that don't have plaques. And when the pianist found a melody with a spine, Naya touched Colin's sleeve and said, "This one's ours." I watched them walk to the small dance floor and become more beautiful at 20 feet. Distance gives grace to people who haven't earned it. My juice sweated a ring into the linen as if it had a secret. That's when I saw him, a man in a charcoal suit near the rail. Not a waiter, not management, posture like a comma. Present, quiet, ready. Years of trade shows and boardrooms train a woman to notice who watches the room. When our eyes met, he waited exactly one breath, then approached. "Miss Mercer," he said, voice calibrated to the table. He tapped a badge by his belt. "Security. I wouldn't drink from that glass again." There are sentences that locate the switch in a chest and flip it clean. "Why?" I asked, and even I admired the steadiness in my tone. "I observed a young man add liquid from a small vial while you watched the band," he said. "Clear cap, right hand." He didn't look toward the dance floor. Professionals know not to nod at the fire. He asked if I wanted police. I asked for his name instead. "Ruiz," he said. "Shift captain. We've preserved the camera angle and can provide a copy. Chain of custody if needed." My body, which has carried me through product recalls and midnight flights and the kind of funerals that age you in the face, became very, very still. I set my fingers on the base of the juice glass like a woman claiming a prop, smiled because women are taught to smile after every blow, and said, "Thank you, Mr. Ruiz, not yet." Breathing is a choice, so is sequence. I unscrewed the small pill bottle in my bag under the table. Heart meds look honest lives. And as the quartet modulated into something slower, I slid the glass to the table's edge and poured a measured inch of orange into plastic. It made the quietest sound in the world. I capped the bottle, eased the rest of the juice toward the planter beside our rail, and watered that glossy lie with an old lady's casual fussing while I adjusted my napkin. Nobody watches an old lady fuss. By the time the dancers returned, my glass was empty, my smile was practiced, and my pulse had a job description. "We should do this more often," Colin said, pulling out Naya's chair like chivalry could invoice the room. "You two looked good up there," I answered, and the miracle was how much my voice sounded like mine. The waiter arrived with small plates. We ate just enough to let the evening claim the title, dinner. "Where'd your juice go?" Colin asked, eyebrows trained not to move. "Finished it while you danced," I said. "Old women get thirsty watching young people become choreography." He laughed correctly. Naya adjusted the notebook she always pretends to use. I stood, set cash on the tray, a gratuity sized like gratitude to the universe for sending me a man in a charcoal suit, and kissed her cheek, then hugged my son a fraction longer than code demands. Men notice when mothers hold on a fraction too long. "I love you both," I said, because that sentence needs to exist somewhere you can find it later. "Stay, finish the wine, have another dance." Outside the string lights, Ruiz met me near the host stand. "You handled that well," he said. "You kept me alive," I said, and felt the truth land with weight and mercy. "We'll keep the footage secure," he added, professional to the edge. "Label it Terrace 9, 8:14 p.m., orange juice. Chain paperwork's waiting if you ask." "I'll ask," I said. On the sidewalk, the air had shifted into that clean place between seasons where a city lets you think. I didn't call the police. I called my concierge and cut off access with a voice that didn't apologize. I texted my lawyer a single word, urgent, and a second one, witness. And then I put the phone in my pocket and walked to the corner like women who intend to continue breathing. Survival, I've learned, is plumbing more than poetry. You move the water before the fire finds it. Tonight began with a number that looked like a country and ended with a list written on the inside of my palm. Lab, lawyer, locks. I crossed at the light, looked both ways like a child taught by a woman who loved her, and promised the woman I used to be that the woman I am would get us to morning. Back home, I used every lock twice and felt each click like a rosary bead, small prayers in brass. The hallway camera gave me my own doorway back in grainy grayscale, a comfortingly ugly truth. And I let the door lean its weight against me while my heart counted to 10 like an old metronome that still knows the song. Then I moved, because survival is choreography, not poetry. Coat on chair, shoes under bench, lights on in rooms I would not use, the small rituals that tell a space who's in charge. I laid a clean tea towel on the kitchen island, set down my purse as if it were evidence, and unscrewed the pill bottle marked OJ, Park View, 1 ounce, the label in my handwriting steady enough to make me proud of the woman I was at 5:02 p.m. I photographed the bottle beside today's paper and my watch, time-stamped truth, then sealed it again and slid it into a hard case because chain of custody starts at the sink as surely as in a lab. The concierge picked up on the first ring. "This is Miss Mercer in 24C. Remove my son and his wife from all access lists, FOBs, deliveries, subkeys, couriers. No exceptions. And if they appear, you call me and building security before you blink." He didn't ask why. Men in his job learn their grace and ellipses. I sat at my desk under a lamp that makes paper look brave and drafted a 1-line text to my lawyer. Urgent witness sample. Then I wrote 3 words on a legal pad. Lab, lawyer, locks. The order a kind of spell, and put my keys in a ceramic dish that kept the sound of metal from echoing like accusation. At dawn, I drove the vial to a private lab whose lobby hums like a refrigerator. Efficiency without theater. Chain of custody intake, rush, I said, sliding the case across. The intake clerk's calm was the right size, gloves on without TV gestures, forms clipped, signatures aligned, a barcode blooming like a new identity. "Prelims this afternoon," the chemist said through safety glass, voice level, eyes kind. "Full report by evening, but prelims are not conclusions." And I loved him for that sentence more than he knew. Second word, lawyer. Mara Hoy keeps her office above a street that believes in consequences. Her reception makes morning sound like a boundary, not a greeting. "Facts, Diane," she said once we were in, doors shut, recorder on. "I have a witness named Ruiz, shipped captain. Preserved footage, chain of custody opened. I did not drink," I said. "Good," she nodded, already erecting fire breaks on a legal pad. Access revoked, POAs rescinded, bank protocols reset, temporary private security in my hallway, no unscheduled contact. Her pen is a scalpel. You don't feel the cut until you notice you're not bleeding anymore. She video called my private banker and said the word escrow the way surgeons say clamp. Policy tried to smile at us and told me cheerfully that last year I had authorized a trusted party confirmation for transfers over $5 million. My son, standard practice in case you're not in good form. Heat lifted in my ears and I returned it to my chest. "Resend it now," Mara said, "and we'll need a cashier's check to attorney escrow today. No electronic trails." Banks move like glaciers and grind cities the same way, but paper still sharpens. I left with the rectangle in my inner pocket, heavy enough to pin a storm to the table. Third word, Lux. Mara had a security firm on speed dial the way decent people have plumbers. By lunch, a quiet woman with a toolbox and a posture built like a level installed 2 new deadbolts that looked like they believed in themselves. A small dome camera took a seat in my hallway with the posture of a choir boy who knows all the verses. I signed for everything, photographed serials, and labeled an envelope hardware. Today, because evidence is just as beautiful when it's boring. The lab called while the tech tightened the last screw. Short-acting benzodiazepine detected. The word warfarin followed like a shadow that means it. In combination with cardiac meds, risky, the chemist said, careful as a measured drop. Full panel tonight. Prelims are not conclusions. I want conclusions. I don't want headlines. And he promised me the kind of truth that survives a courtroom. Back at Mara's, we built insulation instead of weapons, a revocable trust with teeth, distributions for health, education, maintenance, support, an independent trustee with the backbone, no family in the control room, beneficiary updates to cauterize those quiet rivers that bypass wills. The Starling Foundation paperwork sprouted on the table like something that intends to outlive our worst days. Purpose clauses that prefer benches without plaques, laptops that become ladders, pantries that stay open after the cameras go home. I initialed and signed until my name felt like a tool that finally remembered what it was for. On my way out, I bought a small notebook, the analog kind that pretends to be immortal. And on the first page I wrote, "Shade, not statues. Plumbing, not poetry. Breathe." Then I went home and did the bravest domestic thing a woman can do after almost drinking a cliff. I made tea, sat by the window with the city unnamed beneath me, and let the quiet do its job. By morning, the work shifted from locks and labs to rivers and dams, the quiet beneficiary designations that slip around a will like water finding a lower place. And Mara spread them across her conference table until my past kindness looked like a map of leaks. 3 retirement plans still named Cullen Primary and Naya Contingent. 2 brokerage accounts still bore POD to Cullen Mercer. And an old life insurance writer fed a trust we drafted 15 years ago when I believed love and prudence were the same noun. We changed them systematically. Primary to the Starling Foundation, contingent to the Mercer Revocable Trusts with teeth, and for each screen that allowed electronic updates, we clicked through like surgeons closing. Then came the relics, institutions that insist the century hasn't moved. So we printed, signed in ink that smells like permanence, and summoned a courier with a chain of custody log because paper wants witnesses too. One brokerage demanded a medallion signature guarantee, that green stamp from a world that believed character could be pressed into paper. I went with 2 discreet guards I have decided to think of as wearable deadbolts, and the banker guided me through a ritual that felt like church if you squinted. IDs aligned, signatures compared like old friends, a stamp dropped with a pressure that traveled into bone. When we stepped back onto the sidewalk, I saw Naya across the street, half in shadow, sunglasses brave in a sun that didn't require them. She wasn't watching me. She was measuring the men flanking me, the way you study a door you're not sure still opens. We didn't wave. In a different novel, we might have liked each other. Back upstairs, Morrow worked like a clean orchestra. Escrow confirmation, trust account open, foundation banking live, and when the first wire cleared into trust, it felt less like windfall and more like the sound of a valve turning the right way. Money, when it's safe, gets quiet. A cat that can sit still for hours. We sent a smaller trench to Starling on purpose because shade should start growing before a speech is written. I drafted a letter of wishes in my own hand. No galas, no naming rights louder than a bench, preference for laptops that turn into ladders, pantries that stay open after photos, trees in unfashionable places where plaques don't bother to learn the language. And I added one line for the trustee we'd chosen precisely because her kindness has a spine. If a check requires a tuxedo, we wrote it wrong. Mid-afternoon, the full lab report arrived with the calm cruelty of science. Benzodiazepine confirmed, warfarin confirmed, concentrations a prosecutor wouldn't laugh at, chain of custody immaculate. We printed 3 copies, one for the file, one for his safe deposit box, and one for the drawer labeled "if." And Mara's mouth became the thin line lawyers make when justice and timing try to agree. "We do not sprint to court," she said. "We build fire breaks and let the heat show itself." So we added no contact instructions to the building in writing, engaged a week of private hallway security, and memorialized every act with timestamps because judges drink schedule. I texted Victor at Kane Systems a clean sentence. Transition on course, personal matter insulated, code and books remain clean. And his reply had the steadiness of a man who buys verbs. Take what you need, we'll adapt. Evening turned the city brass, and I went home to a door that recognized me.
I cleared the refrigerator of anything already open, tossed bottles with the efficiency of someone who decides to live, and placed the lab report under a lamp as if light could add courage. The phone buzzed with unknown and the faux concern rhythm I can recognize blindfolded. If you want to keep your family, stop letting lawyers ruin it. Talk at home tonight, alone. I forwarded to Mara. She logged, filed, replied. Do not engage. 9 a.m. tomorrow. The only room that holds this is mine. At 12:41, the concierge called. 2 individuals at my door with the locksmith. Emergency maintenance. Protocol flagged. Private security and building staff in the hall. The feed on my phone drew my own doorway like a witness who doesn't blink. The men I hired stood between the bit kit and my deadbolt with the easy patience integrity buys. When they asked the trio to leave, Colin managed a stiff courtesy, and Naya pressed the elevator button like it owed her money. Later, a text came dressed as Mercy, but smelling of gasoline. Will petition for guardianship. You're not well. Paperwork is easy. Judges are tired. Choose peace. I saved it with the rest, because evidence is beautiful even when it's ugly. Then I called Mara on the number that ignores clocks. Logged, she said, awake like a lighthouse. If they file ex parte, we will be in the judge's inbox before the first coffee cools. The room exhaled. I set a chair lightly against my hotel door out of ceremony more than defense, not because wood could stop intent, but because my hands needed to learn new rituals. I added one sentence to the letter I was writing my son. If you want forgiveness, bring a fact. When I finally slept, it wasn't peace. Peace is a word people use when they want your compliance. It was plumbing, the sound of water moving the right way behind walls you have finally learned to own. I chose a room that tells the truth to hold the truth. Park view again, terrace 9, lanterns making maps of light. A quartet tuning the air like a level set on a beam. The rail giving us just enough city to remind us we're not the only story being told. I arrived early, ordered water only, and set 2 thick envelopes on the linen, A and B, because cardboard and ink behave better than feelings. Then I watched the doorway the way a woman watches weather. Colin and Naya entered wearing expressions they must have practiced in the mirror, contrition as costume, concern as cologne. And when they sat, I didn't waste anyone's oxygen. We aren't here for speeches, I said. We're here for sequence. Naya pulled out her ever-present little pad, the one that turns any room into a stage, and smiled the kind of smile that has an exit strategy. Diane, she began, voice dipped in honey, last night was confusing. You left so quickly after a big day. We were worried about your heart, so you brought help, I said, because I had already seen the woman stand from a nearby table, notebook in hand, posture of a professional who invoices by the hour. I'm Carla, a geriatric care manager, she offered gently. Your family asked me to consult. Some concerns about forgetfulness, escalating stress, possible paranoia after the sale. She placed the word paranoia on the cloth like a test strip. I let it sit exactly long enough to be noticed. Not tonight, I said. Tonight, we do facts. I lifted my hand a fraction, and Mr. Ruiz arrived with the quiet of a man who has already saved a life and knows it. Miss Mercer, he said, would you state clearly the thing you witnessed? I asked, my voice the kind that fits in records. He looked at me, not at my son. I observed the young man add liquid from a small vial to your orange juice while you were watching the band. Clear cap, right hand. We preserved footage. Chain of custody paperwork is prepared. The quartet leaned into a minor chord that did not argue with us. Carla closed her notebook on the absence of a diagnosis. Naya's smile tried to land and shattered on the rim of the table. Colin's hands made small fists, then remembered they were on a date with manners. It was a sleep aid, he said too quickly. Over the counter, clumsy. The lad found short-acting benzodiazepine and warfarin. I don't keep either in my home, and I don't put either in my body on purpose. Warfarin plus my cardiac meds isn't sleep, it's a bet. He looked at the glass that wasn't there, and for a moment I saw the boy who once took apart a remote to find the volume inside it. The man returned. "You're overreacting," he tried, but the sentence had no bones. I set my palm on the envelopes and slid them closer to the center. "Option A," I said, tapping the first. "I file a criminal complaint tonight. Witness, footage, lab report, chain of custody. You hire a lawyer and learn to spell felony without blinking." Option B, a tap on the second. "Boundaries. You acknowledge in writing what is already in motion. Access revoked, banks insulated, all support, if any, through an independent trustee under criteria you don't control. Weekly therapy for 12 months, practitioner from a list my counsel approves. Attendance verified. No midnight visits, no locksmiths, no guardianship petitions without medical basis. Communication through counsel only. You choose." Naya found composure like a compact in her purse. "And what do we get?" she asked. "You get time," I said. "You get not being in a court record. For now. And if you pick B, you get a letter I wrote. A map, not an apology." I felt Mr. Ruiz standing like a comma between sentences that could become history. "This is theater," Colin muttered, soft, for me. "No," I said. "This is plumbing. We're moving water away from fire." The waiter approached, grateful to be the kind of person who solves problems with bread. We ordered simply to give our hands something to do. "We'll need to see the video," Colin said, last trench. "Tomorrow morning," I replied. 9 a.m. at my lawyer's office. If you don't come, envelope A walks to the right desk at 10. The pianist found a standard that has survived divorces and wars. Carla excused herself with the dignity of a professional who recognizes when truth has ended her shift. She would still bill, but not interfere. Naya's pen hovered over blank paper. For the first time since I sat down, she stopped pretending to write. "You could have told us privately," she said. Soft steel. "I am," I said, and the room agreed by staying polite. Colin reached for envelope A, weighed it with his palm like a man lifting a future he didn't want, then set it down and picked up B. Paper has a way of being heavier when it's honest. 8 o'clock, I told them, glancing at my watch. Decide before 8. After that, whatever's left on the table belongs to my attorney. I stood, placed a gratuity that could teach a seminar on gratitude in Mr. Ruiz's hand without making a spectacle, and looked at my son long enough to give the sentence its landing. "You can still build something with me, just not out of me." Then I left them with music, maps of light, and 2 envelopes that weighed the same but didn't. Outside, the air had that clean between seasons temperature that tells a woman she's still alive. I walked to the corner, texted Mara, "B presented, 9 a.m. review. Ruiz confirms." Her reply came back like a lock turning, "Standing by." I crossed on green, the way my mother taught me, and felt the city do what families often don't. Keep moving without lies.
I did not go home. I went to the anonymous hotel I keep for days when safety needs a name no one else knows. Checked in under a reservation that remembers me as a woman with boundaries, set my bag down like a verdict, and told my hands what they were for. Warm water on the wrists, phone to silent but alive, chair angled against the door not because wood stops intent, but because ritual teaches the body where the hinge is. At 12:41 a.m., the concierge for my building called, measured, professional. "Miss Mercer, 2 individuals at your door with a locksmith. Emergency maintenance was claimed. Protocol flagged. Private security is with them now. Shall we involve police?" "Yes," I said, already opening the hallway feed Mara had arranged, watching my own new deadbolts sit there like quiet saints, while Colin stood in a jacket he wears when he wants to impersonate authority, and Naya hid behind sunglasses that tell the time wrong. The locksmith packed up when security held the line with courtesy I no longer owe, The elevator swallowed them, and the corridor exhaled. I forwarded the clip to Mara with the timestamp. Her reply arrived in a lawyer's grammar that comforts more than lullabies. Logged. If they file ex parte, I'll be in a judge's inbox before a clerk finds coffee. Sleep somewhere your name doesn't know. At 2:07 a.m., a text came dressed like concern and smelling like gasoline. We'll petition for guardianship. You're not well. Paperwork is easy. Judges are tired. Choose peace. People love the word peace when what they're after is permission. I saved it to the folder called If because evidence is beautiful even when it's ugly, then stood at the window and let the glass cool my forehead until I could listen to my own breath without flinching. At 3:01 a.m., 2 measured taps on the door, professional, practiced. Front desk, a voice said, too neutral for the hour. 2 visitors insist you're expecting them. My alias is not public, I answered through wood. Offer them the lobby camera and a seat until 9 a.m. A pause that sounded like approval. The hall quieted. Then 2 closer knocks, small and personal, the way a memory asks to be let in. I lifted the peephole. Colin, alone, eyes bright with the adrenaline men confuse for sincerity. Mom, please, off the record, he said, pitching his voice to slip beneath the camera's patience. There's a key called please that fits doors he's sworn to retire. I recognized it and left it on the ring. Speak to the door, I said. He glanced up at the lens like a boy caught rehearsing charisma. This is getting out of hand, he began. You'll blow your sale. Buyers hate scenes. Stability of founder, continuity of leadership, one whisper, and your 43 looks like 38 when the market wakes up. It was a tidy little forecast, and he liked how it sounded in his mouth. Victor buys code and clean books. He doesn't buy whispers. Silence spread into the carpet and learned to sit. If we choose A, what happens? He asked, smaller. You tell a version, I tell the truth. The evidence stands by itself. Your name meets acoustics you won't enjoy, I said. The sale finishes without your fingerprints. The foundation grows without your reach. This isn't a threat, it's weather. He slid down the wall to sit, knees up like a boy outside a principal's office. For a second, I could smell the glue of his 5th-grade project and the heat of his scalp under my hand. Then the hallway took the memory back. I'm sorry, he said, and meant it exactly as far as he could throw it. I gave it that distance and no more. He stood when Naya's heels arrived at the corner. She came into view without sunglasses, which is a kind of honesty. We'll take B, she said to the door, voice steady enough to type. Therapy, signatures, no locksmiths, no midnight. 9 a.m., I said. Mara's office. Bring yourselves and no one else. If you don't come, envelope A walks at 10. Colin tried one more angle, softer now. Will you not call the police? You already earned 1 call tonight, I said. You have fewer mistakes left. The elevator chimed like a boundary being honored. They left without slamming the air. I pushed the chair back under the handle anyway, not as barricade, but as ceremony, and added a sentence to the letter I'd started for my son I still claim in ink. If you want forgiveness, bring a fact. I sent Mara a final line. 3 a.m. attempted negotiation, 9 a.m. confirmed, and her reply came like a deadbolt seating. Standing by. Police report drafted and time-stamped. Your choice to file, not mine. Sleep. I lay down in a bed that had never held my name and let the city's late machinery whisper its proof that things keep moving without our permission. When sleep finally came, it wasn't peace. It was plumbing, the sound of water moving the right way behind the walls of a life that just learned where the valves live. Mara's conference room prefers paper to theater, and at 9 sharp it wore its clean morning light like a dress code. 2 chairs on one side for me and Mara, 2 on the other for Colin and Naya. A monitor asleep at the end of the table, a carafe of water no one would touch because liquids had lost their innocence. Mara greeted them the way a boundary says hello, calm, unblinking, and set the sequence out loud so the room could memorize it. We would review the footage, enter option B into a written stipulation, and clarify access, communication, therapy, and the trust provisions. If at any point they preferred counsel present, we would pause. "We're fine," Colin said with the flat bravado of a man who has run out of better costumes, and Naya folded her hands over a legal pad as if prayer could be notarized. The screen woke to Mr. Ruiz's camera angle, my table at Terrace 9, lanterns like a map of good intentions, the dance floor with two bodies briefly beautiful at 20 feet, and my son's shoulders arranged to perform adulthood. We watched without commentary, which is the right way to let truth do its work. The quick flash of a small vial catching a bit of light like a lie that briefly believes in honesty. The tilt toward my glass, my emptying it into a pill bottle you could miss if you didn't know women of 60 carry better pockets than people think. The approach from Wheeze, the quiet, the leaving. When the clip ended, no one clapped and no one argued. Mara placed the lab report and chain of custody on the table the way a surgeon lays out tools. Benzodiazepine confirmed, warfarin confirmed, concentrations that don't blush in court, signatures aligned so cleanly even doubt would have to take a number. Naya's eyes tried to find a different camera angle inside the same rectangular truth and failed. Colin leaned forward, then remembered that leaning doesn't edit film. "Option B," Mara said, sliding a short document across, "is insulation, not vengeance." And she read it into the air so they would hear it from the room as much as from her. No entry to my home or storage or vehicle, no direct asks for money, all communication through counsel, weekly therapy for 12 months with a practitioner from a list we provide, attendance verified directly to the independent trustee, no guardianship petitions without a documented medical basis, no midnight visits, no locksmiths, no third-party care interventions. Then the trust stipulation. Spendthrift provisions in place, distributions, if any, at trustee discretion for health, education, maintenance, support, no pledging or borrowing against anticipated support, no assignments, no leverage, no creative synonyms. Naya called it punishment, softly, testing the word like a bruise. "Punishment is loud," Mara said. "This is quiet. Quiet keeps people alive." I took from my bag a third envelope, the one that had Colin's name in my hand, not A, not B, and set it on the table, facing him. "This isn't an apology or a sermon," I said. "It's a map if you want one. Open it now or later or never. Your choice lives with you, not in the room." And he placed his palm on it as if memorizing its temperature, then slid it toward himself and left it sealed. "Later," he said, and for once later behaved like an honest time. We signed with the choreography good surgeries require, initial here, signature there, date, witness, duplicate, the second set for the file that outlives memory, and the dry click of the stapler sounded like a valve closing the right way. Mara summarized the rest for the record. Sale proceeds segregated in escrow, then wired to the trust and the foundation, banking access protocols reset, beneficiary designations updated, building instructions in force, private security continuing through the week, and a standing invitation for them to have debt counsel review the documents before raising a single objection they couldn't back with facts. "Questions?" she asked, and the room gave them one long permission to be brave. "We will attend therapy," Naya said at last, and it came out not as defeat, but as a sentence tired of lying. Colin cleared his throat and tried to offer the smaller apologies available to men who stand too close to their own momentum. "I said some stupid things at 3, and I let him have that sentence precisely where it belonged. You said several," I answered. "This covers one." And he managed half a smile, the humane kind that knows it has not earned itself yet. We rose, exchanged copies, and the air changed by 2 millimeters, the way air changes when adrenaline exits a room and leaves oxygen to do the rest. At the door, Mara gave them the final instruction disguised as kindness. "If you need counsel, hire counsel. If you need to speak, do it through the channels you just signed." And when the door latched behind them, I felt not victory and not relief, only the weight of a tool put back where it belonged. "All immediate leaks are sealed," Mara said, gathering papers into 2 neat stacks labeled stays and moves. "Now you have one more call to make. Who gets your first clean version of today?" And I knew the answer without thinking. Victor. So I sent him a line that fit on one breath. "Transition on course, personal matter contained. Thank you for the grace on timeline." And his reply came like a steady hand on a railing. "We're good. Take what you need. Code is patient."
I sat a moment longer, palms flat on wood, and let the room teach my body that quiet can be structural, not empty, that some mornings you don't win or lose, you hold. When I finally stood, the monitor had gone black again, a small mercy. Even truth likes a nap after it's done its work.
I did what my late husband always made me do when I began to complicate the easy parts. I went looking for a tree with no plaque and stood under it until I felt small on purpose, the way humility resets a life better than any ceremony. The city was bright with ordinary forgiveness, delivery trucks exhaling, a dog insisting on the wrong direction, a grounds crew planting a young oak into soil that still smelled like intention. And I let the morning move around me while I opened the old notebook I'd bought on the day I decided to live and wrote 3 grants in block letters, so even my fear could read them. A pantry with the line I've stood in, an after-school room where laptops become ladders, a crew that plants shade on unfashionable streets. Underneath, I added, as if it were a sacrament, no galas. If a check requires a tuxedo, we wrote it wrong. Victor texted then with the steadiness of a man who buys verbs. Transition padded 2 weeks. Family first. Code is patient. Grace is a person who trusts your life more than your legend. I answered with, thank you, which is a sentence that costs and buys. Then walked the long way back to Mara's office to sign the last dignities. The will that doesn't pretend to be poetry, a letter of wishes that points to benches without names, and the banking confirmations that put money where heat cannot reach. We decanted old trusts into the new one with teeth, filed beneficiary changes like valves turning the right way, lodged Mr. Ruiz's statement and the lab report in a folder labeled if, and handed a second copy to a safe deposit box that has never needed my name to do its job. On the sidewalk, sunlight practiced being kind, and I let it. At home, my new locks recognized me again, clean, certain, and the apartment smelled like paper with a purpose. I set the watch in the dish by the door and didn't make a monument of the sound it made. I opened a window so air could testify, poured water, and allowed it to be water. Then reread the carbon copy of the letter I'd given Colin, the line the 3 a.m. hallway had earned me. If you want forgiveness, bring a fact. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Decisions don't fix people. They give them a chance to meet themselves later. A message arrived from an unknown number that wasn't unknown once you read the tone. Wednesdays, 3 p.m. works. Will attend. Do we notify you? N. I typed back, show up. The counselor will confirm attendance to the trustee. That's all. Another ping landed softer. He put the envelope on his desk. Says later. Later is an honest time. I left the phone face down because a life doesn't need constant supervision and took the elevator to the street the way a woman steps into a day she intends to keep. I bought cheap coffee that tasted like 1997 and watched 2 teenagers juggle a half-flat soccer ball, better training than a perfect one, and I understood that civilization looks like this when you squint, people doing necessary things they won't be thanked for. By afternoon, the Starling Foundation had a bank account and an EIN that pretends to be important. I sent the first small wire with the note that fit in the memo line, shade, not statues, and copied the trustee whose kindness has a spine. Mara packed the last documents into 2 neat stacks labeled stays and moves, gave me a look that passes for professional affection, and said the only instruction worth hearing after a week like this: rest. I tried. Rest looks like turning off lights in rooms you're not using, like trusting a hallway camera to tell the truth without you, like sitting in a rectangular patch of late sun on the floor until the rectangle changes shape, and calling that progress. When evening arrived, I walked back to Parkview on purpose, asked Mr. Ruiz to thank the team that kept an old woman alive, left a gratuity sized like a footnote to the universe, and took a table by the rail with nothing but water between me and the city. Lanterns turned into maps again, the quartet attuned as if the room still deserved music. Somewhere behind me, a couple practiced forgiveness stiffly, like a new language. I didn't turn to watch. I finished the list I'd started under the tree, emailed the first 3 grants with files that explained themselves, and closed the laptop like a lid on a week that refused to be theater. It wasn't triumph, and it wasn't elegy. It was plumbing.
The quiet certainty that the valves are pointed the right way, that the upstairs won't flood my life tonight. When I went home, the door clicked with the confidence I'm learning to keep. I set my phone beside the watch and the pen, a small bridge between a past that tried to drink me and a future interested in shade, and I slept, not because peace finally arrived, but because for once, and at last, the truth had chairs.